Hello and welcome to Friday. Can you imagine that? Let me think. Could that possibly be so? Yes, it's day number 5 and it is Friday. So as we're going into this 5th day of the week, we have an opportunity to continue along the adventure with Hosea, the husband of Gomer, the father of his firstborn, Yezreel, and then the secondborn, a daughter, Lo Rohumah, and then a son, Lo Ami. And of these 3 children, he knows that he's only the father of one. The others were born, the girl and the boy, were born because of Gomer selling herself to prostitution. And in this family saga, in this very dysfunctional family, we see Yahweh of Israel, the one that he has betrothed to himself, and then the offspring of that betrothal. And they're not bringing forth. God shall sow as the first child, but the results of all that God has done to sow into their life has resulted in unloved and not my child. What a terrible turn of events. And for those of us that know what dysfunction is like, this was dysfunction with a capital D. And we have to understand that God has placed himself not aloof, but identifying right in the middle of the dysfunction. Well, right there is a great meditation we could end this devotion with. But we're going to press on thinking about this God who loves so deeply and richly and completely that we can return to him, the return. And we're talking about Hosea and the invitation and the activity of God trying to mend the difference that he did not cause, trying to heal the brokenness that he did not bring, and trying to remedy the situation that he did not cause. And you can feel a little bit of frustration when you consider that. And now we're going to look at Hosea 4, verses 5 and 6, go a little bit further in the 4th chapter of Hosea, as we are hearing the full charges, the full claims of God. It's not a happy thought, it's a sobering thought. And as we reflect upon this, I believe it can surface some things from our own spirit, from our own heart, as we open ourselves up to him. He goes on to say, as he lodges his complaint against Israel, "You stumble day and night, and the prophets stumble with you." Now, stumbling, whether it's day or night, has an idea of blindness. It's understandable when people stumble in the night. If people stumble in the night, it's typically because there's no lights on. Have you ever gotten out of bed in the night and stumbled over something, maybe a dog sleeping by your bed, or put your toe into a nightstand of some kind? Every one of us have had an experience like that because we're groggy with sleep and it's dark. What do we want to do? We want to make our way in the dark, then back to bed, because if we turn on the light, wow, that's really disruptive. It may trigger that circadian rhythm, and our body may think the sun is up, and then we're not able to go back to sleep. So we opt for the darkness, make our way to our destination, the restroom, to the refrigerator. I'm not sure where your favorite destination is in the middle of the night, and then back to bed. But we want to try to do it in the dark. But when you're stumbling during the daytime, you can't blame it on an inability to see. This is a way of describing blindness, spiritual blindness. Whether it's day or night, you stumble, and the prophets stumble with you. These are the people who claim to speak for God or claim to know about God. And here's their dilemma as a nation. Their prophets, other than Hosea and a select few others, are claiming to speak for the Lord, claiming to speak to the king about the Lord and to the people about the Lord, and to show them the way, but they're stumbling also. So I will destroy your mother. Now this is the idea of the generator, the womb, the idea of the place from which you have come, that which has arisen to give you life. And so God is going to strike at the wellspring of life for them, at what they trust in. Now, it's interesting that they did tend to worship the Queen of Heaven. They did tend to make sacred raisin cakes or fig cakes for the Queen of Heaven. This was one of their secret rituals, one of their secret worship things that they did to one of the Canaanitish gods. And so he's going to basically eliminate everything that has to do with the representation of that goddess. If you think about Egypt, God judged the gods of Egypt by judging through the plagues. It affected every god and goddess of, and there were many, of the pantheon of the gods and goddesses of Egypt. And so he says, I will destroy your mother. And why? He says, because my people are destroyed from lack of knowledge. Because they have no knowledge of me. Because they don't know my heart. Because they don't know my intention. Because they don't know of my plan. Because the prophets have not been speaking to them my vision, have not been speaking to them with clarity about returning to me. They're finding themselves destroyed, cast down, utterly cast down, and that's because they've been connected to this goddess worship in Jerusalem. He goes on to say this, because you have rejected knowledge, and this is the idea of intimate acquaintance and experience with kind of knowledge. Because you have not gone after this knowledge, he's now turning his attention to the priests. And he says, because you have rejected knowledge, I also reject you as my priests. The primary role of the priest was to help people grow in the knowledge of God and in the knowledge of God's law. He says, because you have rejected this knowledge, I also reject you as my priests. Because you have ignored the law of your God, I also will ignore your children. So now their offspring, who would be the next in line to serve as priests, and their students, now God has said, I'm simply going to pay them no mind. I'm going to ignore them because you have ignored the law. Wow. So as we think about that today, what do we need to come away with? I think we need to come away with something along these lines as a meditation. That to know the Lord and grow in the knowledge of the Lord, and to have a sense of the vision that He has of the future and His intentions that He has in store for us, that needs to become our excitement. That needs to become our joy, and that needs to become our fascination. This world has plenty of fascinating things to offer, and the hidden works of darkness and the obscure arts, the occult, and everything else has the promise of secret knowledge and wisdom to bring us into. In fact, there wasn't long ago a movie or a book called The Secret, and it appealed to the sense of the obscure and the dark. That's what's called the occult. What God has for us is in the light. What God has for us is in the day. And what God has for us can be as plain as the nose on our face. It should be easily seen, and it should become a light unto our pathway. And so we can focus upon that and ask this question: am I growing in the knowledge of the Lord? Do I love the knowledge of the Lord? Am I opting just to know something, Or do I move it 18 inches from that which I know to that which I know because I have a deep experience with Him? When we have a deep experience with Him, we know Him and we can help others come to know Him. When we only have something in our head, we know about Him, and it's probably not enough to excite someone else to know about Him too. So, the Lord bless you as you think about that today, and have a great day. Hope to see you tomorrow.